Hey guys, welcome to Y&R Daily Update YouTube channel. Today's topics: Young and the Restless spoilers. Full episode Monday, August 9th, reveals that in the context of Genoa City not yet cooled down from the consecutive shocks, the relationship between Claire and Kyle suddenly became the epicenter, causing a wave of media crisis and a chain reaction in the financial and family world. It was no longer a young love story interfered by the adults in the family, but slid into a highly destructive scandal when Victor stepped in like a veteran director, dropping the bomb at the right time when Claire's suspicions about Kyle were accumulating. From appearing to want to shield Kyle from public opinion, Victor cleverly threw out a few pieces of the puzzle, implying a shady deal in Kyle's past, enough to make Claire, with her skeptical instincts and sense of self-defense forged from past mistakes, immediately demand a clear explanation from her boyfriend. At the same time, Kyle, already struggling under the pressure of corporations, families, and a harsh public opinion, chose to turn against Victor, seeing his implications as a stab in the back. From here, the battle was no longer purely Newman versus Abbott or emotion versus reason. It was a game of truth, power, and the art of redefining the collective memory of a person. The horrible secret about Kyle's dirty past that Victor evoked was not a sensational private scandal, but a smoldering fire in the books, contracts, and confidentiality agreements, which were dangerous because they were hidden in appendices, terms, NDAs, and silence bought with money. Years ago, a seemingly small technology integration deal was accelerated by an extra budgetary support commitment where Kyle agreed to swap a piece of pilot user data in exchange for an early deployment schedule and exclusive API rights. This might be legally construed as a product testing agreement. Ethically and administratively, it was a breach. The data should have been subject to a stricter consensus. What Victor had said was only the tip of the iceberg. A few well-placed phrases: confidentiality agreement, additional clause, media silence guarantee. It was enough to make Claire, who was struggling to rebuild her own identity and trust, feel dragged into a pit of doubt. If Kyle could sign such an agreement, what else had he hidden? If trust had been eroded at the outset, how could the relationship survive the storm? Kyle didn't stand still. His turning away was not just a clear statement to Victor, but also an act of self-rescue from a redefinition of himself under Newman's harsh spotlight. He began to publicize the process of the old deal, having his legal department review every line. Kyle knows that in information warfare, the one who releases the documents first has the upper hand. He wants to turn the story from dirty past to flawed management decisions under pressure. And he's also presenting all the internal emails to show that there were no shady payments beyond standard consulting fees. But Kyle's choice to go the transparent route inadvertently confirms that there was indeed something worth discussing in the appendices, leaving Claire unable to immediately dispel her concerns. The irony is that while defying Victor makes Kyle appear independent, it also pits him against an empire that's well-versed in the art of manipulating public opinion. And that rival is using Claire's confusion as leverage. On the other track, Audra moves in a stealthy and sharp way. She actively threatens Holden Novak, a seemingly outsider who happens to be at the nexus of technology, data, and media pivots. Holden had run a user behavior analytics platform startup that had 5 large beta deals with regional media partners. After his previous collapse, he claimed to have closed the book and was moving on with his life. Holden's current confidence unnerved Audra, and her threat revealed that he held a piece of evidence that could help piece together what Victor had just thrown out, a draft of an API addendum that had been discussed during the tense negotiations. Audra, familiar with the blurred lines between hardball negotiations and psychological coercion, knew that if Holden released a scan with a few lines of commentary, Kyle's story would shift from management context to a conscious moral hazard choice. She threatened to silence Holden, but he remained calm. The calm only found in someone who had prepared a legal airbag. The document would be released automatically if he had an accident. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. This suggests that Audra may not be a secondary suspect, but rather the mastermind of another layer of the conspiracy, where she uses Kyle's scandal to reposition herself in the media tech power matrix. Victor's intervention between Kyle and Claire, if coldly dissected, is a double move. It both weakens an emotional connection that he sees as detrimental to the Newman order and forces Kyle to prove himself, thereby exposing all the corners that Abbott has been so good at hiding. Victor pretends to protect Kyle to maintain his image as the adult who intervenes at the right time, but drops enough information to ignite public opinion, unsettle Claire, and force Kyle to reveal more data, which he can then collect, organize, and use in a larger game. When Claire turns to him for answers, Victor achieves his secondary goal, making the question come from the person Kyle least willing to hurt. Meanwhile, Audra stirs up the underbelly with secret meetings, 24-hour text messages, and a chilling advice to Holden. If she succeeds in controlling the timing of the leak, she will turn Kyle's every announcement into a reluctant defender, always following the crisis rather than leading the story. In the midst of the storm, Nick chooses to act on his instincts to protect his family. But this time, he goes both ways, warning Phyllis and sharing the secret with Sharon. With Phyllis, Nick knows she is too good at the media game and will be tempted to tweak the story to benefit someone she loves. Maybe Summer, maybe just to get revenge on someone. Nick warns because he knows that a reckless move by Phyllis could inadvertently destroy the safety net he has built around Claire and Kyle, or worse, give Victor the opportunity to legitimize further intervention. As for Sharon, Nick needs a cool ear and a systematic view. Sharon has touched many layers of roles: leader, counselor, and human crisis worker, and she understands how an individual trying to escape from the old version of himself will react when pulled back into the past. Nick tells Sharon the piece of the puzzle he has. The traces of a direction line of public opinion that may be related to Victor's deliberate suggestion of the secret annex, and also that some strange accounts have just targeted Holden with innocent but very leading questions. He wants Sharon to help figure out a media roadmap that doesn't add fuel to the fire, to give Claire some breathing room, and to tell Kyle not to turn transparency into a document lottery, because every new document released late will be interpreted as hidden. The Kyle and Claire hotspot is therefore not simply a matter of distrust between two young people. It's a clash of three narrative control philosophies. Victor opts for a strategy of innuendo to force his opponent to reveal himself. Kyle pursues offensive transparency to regain the initiative, and Audra plays with timing and leverage, using outsiders like Holden as pressure mines. Claire is at the center of that vortex with a complicated personal history. She wants to believe in the future she's trying to build, but she's afraid of repeating the pattern of poor choices because she's been blindsided. She demands specific answers, demands a timeline, demands to see the decision branch where Kyle has put his signature. The deeper she digs, the more she sees how wide the gap between not illegal and not unethical can be in the corporate world. And it's Claire's shrewdness in asking questions that gives Victor a quiet satisfaction. She's doing the hardest work for him, sifting through the layers of narrative to find the weak spot. If the whole incident is viewed as a chessboard, the next move will be to control the frame of the story. Kyle needs to stop the drop strategy and instead have a big picture with independent third-party analysis to bring the ethical question back into context at the moment of the decision. Claire needs to maintain emotional discipline, not letting the hurt of Victor's insinuations turn into a double-edged sword that cuts into the future she's holding on to. Victor won't stop. He'll keep feeding the public just enough pieces of the puzzle so that the story never fully closes, creating a crisis humidity that can always flare up. Audra, meanwhile, will tighten her grip on Holden, trying to neutralize his legal airbag, or at least control the flow of the leak. And Nick and Sharon, they are the human rhythm where reason and family loyalty must find a new balance, protecting but not suffocating, intervening but not pushing things any further. The Kyle-Claire scandal thus goes beyond the framework of a love scandal. It is a test of everything. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. Kyle's crisis management skills, Claire's ability to judge the truth, Victor's skill at manipulating discourse, Audra's ambition to climb the power ladder, and Nick and Sharon's instincts to protect the right place. When each character has a legitimate reason for their choices, tragedy often comes from those reasons colliding at the wrong angle. Genya City is witnessing that a city where the truth never appears naked but always comes with context, timing, and the narrator's intentions. Whoever has the power to tell has the power to forgive or condemn. And while all eyes are on Victor waiting for the next bomb, perhaps the scariest thing lies in the very faint sound, the ticking of the time clock that Audra is silently setting, ready to ignite a new wave when everyone thinks they have had time to breathe. Under the thick atmosphere of suspicion after the series of events in Genoa City, the relationship between Claire and Kyle entered the most dangerous phase since they embarked on a love affair that was scrutinized by both families. Their already thin and knotted thread of trust was now stretched by a perfect storm. Work pressure, whispers about the old deal, the still warm memory of the kiss at society between Kyle and Audra, plus alcohol and a private space that blurred the line between reason and emotion. In that context, Holden, a man with the calm appearance of a storm survivor, accidentally became a life buoy for Claire to cling to at the right time when she needed a place to breathe. A seemingly harmless touch, a comforting word placed on a broken vein, a heartbeat out of rhythm when self-esteem was hurt, all piled up into a dangerous moment. And then the kiss happened. Brief, lost, but deep enough to shake the ground beneath Claire's feet. The irony is that the worst tragedies have their timing. Kyle appeared just as the kiss touched, his eyes catching the image of Claire leaning in reflexively and Holden not having time to pull back. For a split second, any attempt at explanation became superfluous. Kyle's mind immediately rewinded to the scene at society. Audra pulled him in for a surprise kiss, and he, though he hadn't initiated it, was a beat too late to pull away. It was that moment of delay that became the key to Claire's broken trust. Now the wheel of fate turned again, forcing Kyle to taste all the betrayal Claire had felt. Anger mixed with shame, a cornered ego, and a sense of losing control of her own story. Coldly analyzed, the emotional errors of both came from the same formula: pressure and space. Audra initiated the kiss, yes, but Kyle could have pulled back faster or at least more firmly to cut off any possibility of interpretation. Claire kissing Holden perhaps was just a knee-jerk reaction, a slip while balancing on the thin wire of wounded pride. In this scenario, neither was entirely innocent nor entirely at fault. They were caught between an external force, Audra's forceful kiss, a shock of trust, and an inability to stop in time. Genya City has long demonstrated that relationships rarely fail because of a single kiss, but because of a series of bad choices before and after. From a strategic perspective, Audra is the best reader of emotional rhythms. She understands that jealousy is a fast-burning bright fuel and that if found at the right moment, it can turn a teetering man like Kyle into a blazing inferno. After Kyle's encounter, the most obvious scenario is that Audra appears as the one in the right place, pretending to be a temporary shelter for a wounded heart. One night of anger, one slip in the moral ladder, and tomorrow's discourse will be reversed. Instead of Claire's spontaneous kiss, the story will be Kyle slept with Audra in retaliation. Audra doesn't need to say it out loud. She just needs to make sure that if the incident does happen, there will be enough traces to linger in the collective memory. A hotel bill, a stray button, a text message vague enough to pique the curiosity of outsiders. Holden, on the other hand, is an unpredictable variable. He has been calm in the face of Audra's attacks, wise enough to know that he is in the magnetic field of two great families. The kiss with Claire, if it was born of a flash of empathy, could have put him in a dangerous zone, being turned into a tool in the war between Audra and Claire, between Newman and Abbott. The more silent Holden is, the more he is labeled. Conversely, if he speaks up, any explanation is easily interpreted as an excuse and unintentionally puts Claire in a more awkward position. In the most reasonable scenario, Holden would have to proactively create a safe distance, both to prove that he is not taking advantage of the situation and to give Claire the space to identify her true feelings. Where is the scratch of self-esteem? Where is the true emotional thread? As for Kyle, his anger is understandable. Feeling slighted, labeled a traitor for a moment of slow reaction to Audra, is now being reflected back at him in a cruel way. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. But what he does in the next 24 hours will define his future. If he rushes to Audra to feel wanted and validated, he will walk right into the psychological trap has prepared. If he locks his phone, disappears, and punishes Claire with silence, he will destroy an already fragile attempt at dialogue. The difficult but lasting path is the one adults take. Demand a non-interference conversation. Lay out all the timelines. Acknowledge his own mistakes in society. Listen to Claire's distorted perceptions of her moment with Holden, and then design new safety rules for the relationship together. Claire, meanwhile, faces a hard truth. Her kiss, however brief, however intrusive, was a line crossed. She has reason to be angry with Kyle for Audra. But reason does not come without consequences. If she wants to save the relationship, she must name her feelings honestly. Jealousy, hurt pride, fear of repeating past slip-ups, not feelings for Holden. That honesty will be the key to easing Kyle's anger. Because what drives people to despair is not the kiss, but the feeling that the other person doesn't know what they want. When Claire makes it clear that this is a mistake, not a replacement, she takes the power of definition back into her own hands. While the two protagonists struggle internally, the external waves show no signs of abating. Audra continues to sow questions at the wrong time, silently reminding Kyle of the deep truth. She believes he refuses to acknowledge that he still wants her. With expert skill, Audra will use Claire's own trauma as a reason to free Kyle. She kissed someone else first. You're being fair to yourself. It's language well suited to lonely nights after a disaster when pride demands compensation. Only after dawn, sanity asks again, does fairness mean destruction? Deeper down, both families have motives for intervention. The Abbotts don't want Kyle's name to be associated with the image of an impulsive playboy, something that has damaged stocks and partnership negotiations. The Newmans don't want Claire to drift off the trajectory they've worked so hard to rebuild. The tip calls to the tabloids, the blurry photos from the restaurant's camera, the anonymous source commenting on the intimate attitude between Claire and Holden, all create a thick layer of clouds, making it difficult for the insiders to see the sun. Here, Nick and Sharon, if they choose to stay on the side of reason, can become two pressure relief valves, preventing shocking media twists, keeping the Claire and Kyle story still a chance to be resolved by the two insiders, not by the public. From what happened, Y&R can push the story along two logical climaxes. The first is revenge. Kay falls into Audra's arms during a night of rebellion only to face Claire the next morning with a guilty look and a mistake that is difficult to erase. This branch satisfies the thirst for drama, pushes Audra to the position of a scheming villain, and forces Claire, if she wants to keep the relationship, to go through a long and harsh journey of forgiveness. The second branch is balance and rebuild. Claire's awkward kiss is called out for its name as a mistake in a moment of weakness, becoming an emotional counterpart to Kyle's slow retreat in society. The two use their own pain to establish a new set of rules, boundaries with axes, how to handle being touched, and an alarm process when emotions cross the threshold. This branch has less fireworks, but creates a solid foundation for the next conflicts while keeping the characters from being pushed completely into the irretrievable zone. The key to keeping the story from spiraling into tragedy is the post-crisis response. If Kyle can get past the immediate humiliation and choose to look at the total damage rather than the snapshot, he will see that Claire's kiss in terms of motive was the product of a rift that he helped create. If Claire can put down her defensiveness, own her impulse, and proactively distance herself from any possibility of a repeat with Holden, she will turn the mistake into a shared lesson, not an offensive weapon. And if they both sit down and rewrite their relationship contract in concrete language, No private dinners with exes. If they are kissed unexpectedly, the immediate response is to back off and notify each other within 24 hours. No third-party retaliation. Prioritize dialogue over silent punishment. They will create a new safe space, something that many Genoa City couples lack. Of course, even the balanced scenario is anything but boring. Audra won't stop. Holden will have to defend himself from both sides of the gun, and the adults in the house will continue to test the waters. But as the central plot, Claire and Kyle, grow up, all the outside tricks will lose their effectiveness. Subscribe our channel for more latest update. Y&R has always lived on emotional twists, but the best twists aren't those that burn out and then burn out. They're transitions that make the characters deeper, more complex, and the relationships harder to break because they'd been through the fire. In the end, the perfect storm has swept through, leaving a big trail, an awkward kiss, a hurt look, and a whole host of temptations. But the storm doesn't decide the direction the pilot does. If Kyle had slipped into Audrey Unk's arms, it would have been a loud, costly, regretful turn. If he chooses to stand back, look Claire in the eye, and tell her his weaknesses, and Claire responds with unwavering honesty, they can turn a moment of shame into the beginning of a new chapter. In Genoa City, forgiveness is never cheap, but when it comes after a series of difficult confrontations and re-established rules, it has a staying power that even players like Audra are wary of. And perhaps that's what they both really want. Not a victory over their opponents, but a victory over their own egos. So they can move forward together this time stronger.